Allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm the Grand Regent, Camaro Jackson. Many men wish they could step up to me. Many men wish they could snatch more heads than me. Many men wish they could conquer more kingdoms than me. I'm knocking all of y'all heads off your shoulders. I'm taking over that kingdom now. Who do you honor? Legends lore. Tune in, you know what's in store. Heel turns and face returns.
Got me on the mic, now let's spill the tea. Talking courtside dreams from history. Legends on the blacktop now and then. From Wilt to Steph, we hit it again. Open a chimes in, let's go deep. Young bloods rising, can't skip a beat. Puppy prospects with fire in their eyes. Draft night suckers and hoop dream highs. Wire to wire, bring the heat. Podcast magic can't be beat. Do better, but go better. Or who cares? Trendsetters.
What's poppin', y'all? It is your boy, it is Gardi3, and welcome to this week's edition of the And One podcast. And joining me, just like every week, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the greatest co-host of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Mo Better. How you doing, Mo?
I'm doing great on a Thursday night, getting ready to get into it on the And One podcast. Appreciate everybody for coming out and joining us.
No, absolutely. So, anybody who hasn't tuned into one of our shows every week, Doc Rivers, I want to see 2 wins in a row. We've seen 2 wins in a row with Doc, ready to make it 3. I'll see you in the finals, Reverse Enigma. Thank you for tuning in today. But you know how we start? We'll definitely be talking about Doc Rivers in a minute, I promise you. But we always start off with our underrated players of the week. Too many great players get lost in day-to-day basketball and in history and time. So, Mo, do you got an underrated player of the week for us this week?
I do, and I think he is underrated if you think about his career from start to where it is now. My underrated player this week is Uncle Jeff Green. Jeff Green was, to me, he was the foundational piece that led to KD, Russ, Harden. Jeff Green wasn't a huge scorer, but look, Uncle Jeff, young Uncle Jeff, could put the ball in the hole. He averaged about 15.6 rebounds as a starter. I remember the Celtics bringing him there. I think they wanted him to be more of a franchise player, but that wasn't really Uncle Jeff's lane. But if you look at what he's been throughout his career, early in his career, solid starter who can help you score, give you buckets, solid defender. And then later in his career, as he got older, the league switched. He learned how to extend his range, and he became a star role player. He is now a championship star role player. So I think Jeff Green has had a very interesting, long, and distinguished career. So that's my guy this week. My underrated player, or underappreciated player, I'll say, is Uncle Jeff Green.
Honestly, that's a great one. I think Jeff Green, he's just so good for so long. And of course, my favorite part about Jeff Green is like every time I see him in a playoff series, I know that absolutely when I'm least expecting it, he's just going to post for someone. And it's the same like one-handed hammer every single time. So
Uncle Jeff with sneaky hops.
No, absolutely. My underrated player this week, I'm going to actually go with somebody who's been on an absolute great run so far this year. You know, everybody was talking about when it comes to most improved player, we're talking about, it's Wemby's deluge, and that's fair enough. Wemby has been absolutely phenomenal this year. Well, his field goal percentage leaves a little to be desired, but overall, Wemby's off to going to have another great year, but what about Dyson Daniels so far this year? He's been absolutely excellent for the Hawks. Not only him, shout out Jalen Johnson, too. He was somebody that we spotlighted last year on the show, ironically, just before he got injured. He's back. He's having another great year. But now Dyson's taken this great leap. He's up to over 14 a game, but the crazy part is, for the last 3 games, I believe he's averaging over 6 steals a game. He's just been an absolute game wrecker defensively, and he's only going to get better with more experience. This is a kid who's only 21 years old. I think he came over in the DeJounte Murray trade.
He did. He did.
So this was already looking like a great pickup for the Atlanta Hawks, and I think there's a very real chance that long term, Dyson Daniels is going to make that DeJounte Murray trade alone just look great for him.
I think that's a great player to pick for this week. That's a great player to pick going forward, period. I had my problems with the DeJounte Murray trade for that reason. I'd watched the Pelicans all last season, and I thought Dyson Daniels got better as the season went on. And Herb Jones was their best defender. I know Alvarado gets a lot of shine, but their second best defender was actually Dyson Daniels. And he's not what I call a fluid scorer, but he does have the ability to attack the basket. He's improved his shooting. The fact that he's as young as he is, Brett, to me, when you go back and look at that trade, my problem with the trade was it felt like a panic move. I don't deny that they got the better player overall, but had they just stand pat and kept Dyson Daniels, he was improving. He would have been part of your already young core. Like, you'd have had him, Herb Jones. You would have had Zion, obviously. Your veteran would have been Brandon Ingram, who's 26, 27. Sometimes I look at franchises and you think it's the moves you don't make. DeJounte Murray is a proven player, but I don't think DeJounte Murray, this current version of DeJounte Murray, while he's a better player, I don't think he would have made the Pelicans that much better than an improved Dyson Daniels. One of the reasons why the Atlanta Hawks have a very respectable record is Dyson Daniels. It's the play of Jalen Johnson and Dyson Daniels. They've won games, Brett, without Trae Young in the game at all, because they can get after it defensively, and then they're one of the few teams that are the opposite of teams like Philly or your Bucks. The Hawks are very athletic across the board. I just think we're going to look back on that trade and go, man, the Pelicans should have just stayed pat. But that's what happens. This is one of the times when Atlanta made a move, and on the surface, it seemed lopsided. It is lopsided, but it's lopsided in favor towards the Hawks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's tough to really judge that trade for the Pelicans, too, just because our worst year with them has come to life. But it's even gone farther than that. Like, obviously Zion's hurt already, and we don't know when we're
as usual
back.
As usual, like tell me something else is new. Like say water is wet, Zion's hurt, right? Come on.
It's more so just how many of the rotation pieces are hurt. Like, I think they have like 7 guys on the injured list right now. So it's tough to gauge what the Pelicans are, but I think that'll be interesting going forward, because I think you're going to see the Pelicans get shaken up this next offseason. I think somebody else has to go, and I think it's going to be Brandon Ingram.
It's going to be BI, because the Pelicans are going to do what a lot of franchises have done. They're going to talk about the upside of Zion Williams and say his upside is better than Brandon Ingram's. By the way, this isn't a secret. Yes, his upside is better than Brandon Ingram. The problem is you won't get to see enough of his upside. The reality is, if I were the Pelicans, they'll never do this. I would move Zion and get a haul for Zion. If you can get 4 number 1s for Rudy, Zion's got to be worth 5 in a couple of players. I would do that. By the way, since we're on the subject of moving guys who aren't going to age well, if Philly doesn't realize by now, you got to move that guy. You got to move that guy the next time he gets a 100% bill of health. Move him, get a haul, and build around Tyrese Maxey. The end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just so unfortunate. Philly fans get so excited. You're getting a big three, and then now they all just can't be healthy. First the two older stars start out hurt. PG's healthy. Now Maxey's hurt. Now Embiid's coming back, but it's just it's just weird for them right now. But on the bright side, I will say this. Jared McCain looks legit. He's looking great for them.
You know what? Let me keep it a buck, because sometimes we talk about draft picks and we go, he wasn't that good. I'd watched McCain in college. I didn't know that he'd be able to translate and be as good as he is in the NBA, because initially you look at him, Brett, and you go, he's probably going to be a solid role player. But when you watch the Sixers play, this kid has the mentality, Brett, that he's the number one option. Like, he doesn't lack for confidence. And when you look at those tree trunk legs, like, he's got legs like Saquon Barkley, very powerful lower base, strong driver to the hole. If he can improve that jump shot, you might have your backcourt of the future with him and Maxey. Love McCain. But again, I just think that Daryl Morey does something that Daryl Morey has done throughout doesn't do the hard work. Daryl Morey never builds franchises from the bottom up. He goes for the next biggest name, and he sticks a Band-Aid on things and hopes it works. 35-year-old Paul George is not going to help you get to an NBA Finals. Joel Embiid, who I believe is 28, 29, but has the body of a 35-year-old and the attitude of somebody 75, you're not going to go to the finals with him as your best player. Shaq was like, till he gets his mind right. Once again, look, that it's the most honest thing Shaq said, and yet he's still wrong. It's not his mind. It's that thing in his chest that's lacking. Joel Embiid, for all his talent, and people will tell you he's the most talented or skilled big man we've ever seen that's not named Joker, but the reason why we don't put him with the best of the best, that thing in his chest is lacking. It's lacking. He's got a lot of quit in him. If the Sixers were smart, if Daryl Morey would break away from his mold, his normal mode of going with a bigger name, he would make this move ASAP, as soon as possible. Not only move Joel Embiid when he's able to, he would move Paul George.
How's it going, Kevin? Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, Embiid is already 30.
Right. But he looks like he's 40.
Yeah, no, it's ironic because, like, LeBron's 40, but he doesn't look it. But it's almost like him and Embiid switch bodies. It almost feels like LeBron's 30 and Embiid's 40.
Yeah. Whatever LeBron's eating, Embiid needs to get his diet. He needs to get the secret.
Yeah. And by the way, did you you see the new meme we're gonna have coming out of the NBA community? Poor Jalen Rose got PTSD flashbacks. For anybody that didn't catch, and I'm sorry, Kevin, because I know you're a Heat fan, but I have to bring it up. Eric Spoelstra calling a timeout when they didn't have any, and Jalen Rose, absolutely, that Chris Webber PTSD hit that man so hard because he was like, he had that look on his face like, oh no, not again. It's weird because that's just not a mistake you expect from Spo.
Right.
That's the part that threw me off guard. Like, I think, like, Miami, they started out 4-6, probably about exactly where I kind of thought they would be to start. But I'm not going to lie, that was surprising to me because out of all the coaches that would make that mistake, and there was a handful that I could see making it, I never expected that out of Spo. So,
yeah, it was surprising. I mean, look, and it goes to show you, though, if Spo can make that mistake, anybody can make that mistake.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Spo's a champ. He owned up to his mistakes. Definitely not mad at him.
Right.
There's not a better coach in the league than Eric Spoelstra, and I will die on that hill. I get it. There are better teams but I don't think there are many coaches that can do what Spoelstra does with less.
And look, on a side note, I'm gonna give the Pistons their flowers. I said coming into the season that the goal, to me, Cade Cunningham's goal should be to lead the franchise back to respectability. Remember, when you win 19 games, you don't make the leap and go, "We're going to make the playoffs." Lead your team back to respectability, and then start talking about playoffs. Well, they're respectable. They have a respectable record, and if they're going to continue to play this way on a nightly basis, then these Pistons, they're going to be close to 40 wins. So I would say that they're on pace to accomplish their mission and then some. I do like the core that they have. I like the fact that their management is going to continue to try to develop this core instead of panicking, because I do think they have a lot of young talent that does mesh well together in the right system.
Shout out to Bickerstaff as well. Pistons way better so far already.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's just a big difference. Bickerstaff looks like he wants to be there. Like Monty looked like he'd rather been anywhere but Detroit. JB's, you can tell he's bought in. He's making sure everybody develops properly. Team looks much better spacing. Cade looks awesome. Jaden Ivey looks fantastic. Side note, I'm really glad that Tim Hardaway Jr. is okay.
Yeah, same.
If anybody didn't see, he hit his head like 3 times on the ground on like the same play. He got hit in the face on a contest, then he got knocked to the ground and somehow hit his head twice. So that scared me, but I'm really glad that Tim Hardaway Jr. is okay. Thoughts and prayers as he recovers.
What are your thoughts, Brett, overall, when you look at the records in the Eastern Conference? Because to me, this reeks of what you would say that the powers that be would want. You would think that this is what Silver wants, right? Some form of parity. But is this parity, or is this teams that have bigger expectations getting off to a slow start?
I think most of it is, it's funny because I think it's a mix of both. Because when I look at the seedings now, it's not too different than what I predicted before the year started. Especially the top 5 with the Cavs, Celtics, Magic, Knicks, Pacers. The only difference is obviously I still have the Bucks at some point crashing the top 5. But like the playoff picture right now looks very similar to how I thought it would play out. And also, I think the Hornets will eventually move in and the Nets will get, bow out at some point. But overall, I think it's a mix of some teams and players are just getting off to really hot starts, and a lot of these, vets are just, getting off to really slow starts.
No, I agree. Look, and nobody knew that Cleveland was going to come out looking this way. More importantly, when you looked at what they didn't do, by basically keeping their core together, not making any major moves. Like I said, I give them credit for opting for continuity, and it's worked. I'm a little skeptical of what they can do in the bigger picture. Remember, the NBA is never a sprint. You can get off to a great start, but where you are when the playoffs roll around and how you're playing is all that really matters. I look at the Cavaliers top to bottom. I'm impressed, and I want to give them their flowers. Do I think the Cavaliers are going to finish with the top seed in the East? I don't. Do I think the Cavaliers are going to be in the conference finals in the East? I don't. I just think they're off to a great start and they're playing well. I just think that you have to factor in the Knicks' slow start. The Pacers have been a little bit mediocre to start. The Celtics are doing what champions do. They're playing at a high level, but I don't think the Celtics are playing with any kind of sense of urgency, not when you're coming off of winning it all. I don't think it's important to them necessarily to have the number 1 seed. I think they're good with being 1 or 2. So I do think when it's all said and done, do I expect Milwaukee to be in the top 5? I do. But I still think unless Doc commits to playing younger players on a consistent basis, the Bucks' flaws, they're still going to be there. That game that I watched against the Pistons, Giannis had to have an almost godly game to pull that game out. And even then, had the kid not missed both free throws, they would have lost. I just think scoring isn't necessarily the issue. The issue is their defense, and they've got to find a way to shore their defense up.
But by the way, I absolutely have to, absolutely big kudos to Cleveland. I absolutely have to address this because I still see the conversation, Mo, and I do not understand. And I want to just say this loud and clear so everybody can hear me. If it's 2024 and you're still trying to say that Giannis has no skill, you're just an idiot. I got into a full debate with somebody trying to tell me that Giannis is just unskilled because he just quote unquote run and dunks. And I'm just like, I thought we broke that narrative years ago, but okay. We want to say he just run and dunks. He's actually shooting 46% from the mid-range this year. He's actually been pretty knocked down so far from the deep mid-range. Ironically, it's like between 15 and 20 feet he's money from. Between like 10 and 15 is really where it gets dicey for him. And then anything close to the rim, he's fine. But I really hate how skill gets tied to bag. If you don't have a big bag, you're unskilled. And I absolutely hate it. Like, is someone like Kyrie Irving have, like I'll use Kyrie for example.
He has the most complete bag in the NBA, but he's not the best. But he's the best player in the NBA? Far from it.
No, he's not even the best player on his own team.
Facts.
So to me, it's just wild that some people take skill and bag and really value that over just, to me, the most important thing, impact. How are you impacting winning games? You can have the biggest bag in the world, but that doesn't really matter now, does it? James Harden has a bigger bag than Giannis, and he said he wishes he could run and dunk. Well, run and dunk, man. Still was able to win MVPs in a finals. And here's my other point with that. If it's so easy to stop Giannis because he's so unskilled, because he's just an athletic finisher, why aren't more athletic finishers just running to the rim and averaging 30 a game? Why isn't Jackson Hayes averaging 30 a game just off of rim runs if it's that easy?
Trust me, as a Laker fan, I'd love that. But am I expecting that? No. Look, I've had this argument. You've had it recently. I've had this argument going back a couple of years. They were doing a comparison with Giannis and Anthony Davis, and they were talking about how more skilled Anthony Davis is. I didn't argue with that. I acknowledge Anthony Davis is a much more polished and skilled offensive player, but his skill doesn't trump Giannis's impact. If all Giannis did was run up and down the court and dunk, then something's wrong, because this current NBA, the era that we live in, what do they harp on all the time about this NBA, Brett? This NBA is more skilled than the 90s. It's more skilled. You have to have more skill. You have to be able to shoot. Giannis literally breaks that mold because he's not a natural jump shooter, but he does two things. One, the way he plays, he is relentless. He is a relentless competitor. He doesn't take plays off, and he is coming at you over and over and over. Two, he is skilled. Is he skilled in the way that Anthony Davis is, or the way Embiid is, or Joker? No, he's skilled in a different way. He's an incredible athlete that, yes, I get it. Monster in the open. He doesn't just play in the open floor. He can post. He's developed a little mid-range jump hook. The other night, I think he hit like 17 free throws. Like, he showed you when he focuses, he can make free throws. Not to mention the impact he still has defensively. I go back. You can go back even further, Brett. Go back to when Shaq was at his peak. You could name a number of centers who have bigger bags than Shaq, but they didn't have the impact or the dominance of Shaq. I always use Shaq as my Giannis comparison. I look at Giannis and say Giannis is a mini. He's Shaq with a handle. Imagine Shaq with a handle in the open floor, or imagine Shaq in the half court set being able to isolate and blow by somebody and attack the rim. Giannis is a 245-pound Shaq.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's a reason why always say, and people seem to like get confused by it. I always say, if Shaq played in 2024, people would hate him. Like the way he plays, he doesn't have a quote unquote big bag. He's just bigger than you, and he knows it. So that's always one of my things with Shaq is I always tell people that if he played now, you would hate it. But yeah, no,
they would hate it, but could they stop it?
No. And that's funny. Yeah, the Pistons was a game that it sounds like, oh well, the Bucks should easily win. It's Detroit. Well, Detroit's been playing well.
They have,
and obviously the Bucks were out Damian Lillard. We didn't have the backup point guard either, who played really well, and Ryan Rollins, who had 5 steals for us against Toronto. Obviously, we're still out Chris Middleton. We didn't have Bobby Portis. And Giannis responds with 59 points, 7 assists, 3 blocks, 2 steals, and 14 rebounds, and hitting 16 free throws. Like, in terms of playing a perfect basketball game, that last night against Detroit is probably the closest thing you might ever see in your life to a perfect basketball game, outside of maybe watching Jokic when he's on.
And let's say something else that people don't realize. If you looked at both teams top to bottom, we're talking about being honest. Outside of Dame and Giannis, you'd say the Pistons are actually more talented than Milwaukee. Top to bottom, they're more talented than Milwaukee. And it's funny because a couple of games that Dame hasn't played, I'm not saying something's going to happen, but the defense looked better. The offense looked a little bit better. I don't know that they need Damian Lillard. I do think obviously he needs a sidekick, but I don't know if they need Damian Lillard. I was going to make the argument because I keep hearing these stupid rumors, and you've heard them too, I'm sure, ad nauseum. You're a Bucks fan. Giannis is going here, and he's not going anywhere. But if we're going to be moved, it would be Damian Lillard. They would move Damian Lillard. I think if they could bring in a 2 guard who was more of a 3-and-D guy, but an elite one, somebody like that who could still get you 16 or 18 a night, but be elite defensively and was younger, I think and you probably would, for Dame, you probably get a couple of nice players. I would make that move. Because I think the Dame Giannis duo, I'm not saying it won't work, but I think it shows you the same way Giannis won a title a couple of years back. He was flanked by 2 really good players, not superstars. You would call them stars, but they weren't superstars. I don't think Giannis is the type of star. I don't think he needs a second superstar. I think he needs competent stars around him that complement his skill set. I'm still not convinced Dame complements what Giannis does.
And I think what's going to be big for the Bucks when it comes to, obviously, I still don't know when it is. Whenever we get Chris Middleton back, the Bucks are always going to be cautious with him, which is fair. There's no need to rush him back beginning of the season. But at first they were said maybe Thanksgiving, and now it's just there's no date on the timeline. So I'm really excited to see us, with him back, and I think that will help the offense too. At the end of the day, I think a big problem with our defense is the offense. Why? Because if you look at everybody's shooting, not named Giannis or Dame, you would probably cry. Like, those 2 are combining for 60 a game, and we still can't outscore half the teams. That's a problem. And I think it's because, like, Gary Trent, for example, before he had his 4 or 5 game, was like 29% from 3. Bobby Portis was in a shooting slump. Pat Connaughton's in a shooting slump. There's just this team-wide shooting slump, and I think a big part of that is shot selection. We, for some reason, are 3rd in the NBA in mid-rangers, which I don't think we have the personnel to be taking that many mid-rangers. I think there's 3 guys on the team I want to see in the mid-range. Chris, Dame, Giannis. Everybody else either get to the 3-point line or just get to the rim. Brook Lopez can do some work in the mid-range too, but a lot of these misses, though, are just middies and threes that we're missing, leading to long rebounds, getting this older team out in transition. It's killing us. So I think, the Bucks will be fine, but I think a big part of fixing their defense is simply just hit some shots on offense, and that will fix, I think, some issues. There will still be some, but I think that would help a ton.
I think you make a good point. If you can get Middleton back, and he's the Middleton that we're used to seeing, let's say he gives you 18, 19 points a game, 5 or 6 assists, shoots a high percentage. If you get that Middleton back, yes, it improves your offense, and you're right. One way to improve your defense is the other team has to take the ball out the net. That allows you to get back, set your defense, and then make it more about a half court set instead of playing at the other team's pace. When I've watched the Bucks most of this season, they've been at the mercy of the other team. They've played at the Pacers' pace. I've even seen them play at the Bulls' pace. The Bucks do not have the legs or the athletes to play an up and down game. Giannis can play an up and down game, but as a team, they're not built for that. They're more methodical. I think they want to execute in a half court set and beat you that way. And I think getting Middleton back, it gives you another scorer, another playmaker, and also gives you another solid defender. I also think a key is, you just brought it up, the Gary Trent I saw the other night. That's the Gary Trent I expected. That's what I'm used to seeing. So if he gets back on track and he starts shooting the catch and shoot threes at around 40% from the field, that's going to change things too. Gary Trent, to me, I still thought he was going to be the steal of the off season. He still can be, but they need him to be the Gary Trent that we're used to seeing. Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Bucks will be fine. I'm looking beyond just this season, because I don't know how long you hold this team together when it's as old as it is. And Giannis wants to win titles. And I'm not saying this to buy into any crazy trade rumors, because what I believe is, if the front office believes Giannis is like, hey, we need to do something, then I think the front office will make moves. One of the moves will not be Giannis. Let's get that out the way. I believe Giannis is going to retire a Bucks. I think Bucks management will do everything in their power to keep bringing in talent to complement him. And that's why I'm saying it's not out of the realm that they might move Dame. I think it's possible.
No, that's absolutely fair. And of course, I think Giannis, it's fair to say, at the end of the day, even with his team 4-8, I think he's really in the thick of the MVP hunt again. And it's funny, the more things change, the more they stay the same, I guess, because I think you can make a strong argument, Mo. Well, that Jokic and Giannis are 1 and 2 for MVP again. I think if you throw Shea in there, he's the 1 seed in the West. But I thought the voters would, try everything in their power to avoid voting for Nikola Jokic to get his 4th MVP. Right now, it's a little too early for that conversation. We're only 13 games in, but early season, they are not giving them a choice. I think Nikola Jokic has been insanely impressive.
Isn't he doing a triple-double right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Joker's insane right now. If he can sustain this, Brett, over the breadth of the season, and let's say the Nuggets are a 3 or a 4 seed in the West, I think him or Giannis will win the MVP without being the number 1 seed, because I look at Denver, and I think you would agree, they're clearly not nearly as talented or as loaded as they were before. But he's still keeping them above 500. Remember, this is with Jamal Murray playing subpar basketball. Jamal Murray shooting 40% from the field, and he doesn't look anything like the Jamal Murray we're used to. The second most consistent player on that Nuggets roster right now is Christian Braun. He's played well. Yeah,
so for anybody that hasn't seen much of heard of Jokic's stats for right now, he's at 29.7 a game for points. So he's pretty much at 30 a game. 13.7 boards, 11.7 assists.
He's crazy.
But I think the most insane thing, what's really making him unguardable so far this year, is just his shooting. Guess what this man is shooting on wide open threes?
Probably over 50%.
61%.
Oh my
61.9.
God.
So, and if you leave him open for three, 57%. And of course, if you get too close to him, then he starts playing his bully ball game, and you do not want to get into the post with Nikola Jokic. So I'm sure I'm praying at some point that that shooting stabilizes, because if he shoots that hot, or anywhere close to that hot this year, the Nuggets just might go back to the finals.
I think he's great enough to take them on a deep run. I don't think he's great enough to take them back to the finals with the current roster. They don't have enough shooting. If they can acquire another shooter, I'm with you 100%. But right now, they just don't have enough shooting.
No, hey, if he does take him to the finals, though, with the spacing around him, we might have to just put him in the GOAT conversation right away.
If he can bring this current team with the lack of shooting and the lack of depth that they have, yeah, why wouldn't he be? Like, he'd earn another MVP and another trip to the finals. And as great as he is, I'm guessing that the Nuggets would not be favored in that finals, assuming they're matching up with the defending champs, if that were to happen. And I'm this is no shade at anybody. We're far from deciding who's going where, because the Timberwolves are going to have something to say about that. The Mavericks are going to have something to say about that. The Grizzlies have been solid. They haven't been great. They've been solid. They'll have something to say. And even the Suns, who by the way, I've been very impressed with both Phoenix and Golden State. You and I talked about Golden State a lot prior to the season starting, and I will keep it 1,000%. I did not think Golden State would be this good. I didn't. Flat out, I did not.
I think I got some weird comments when I said that I didn't think they'd be this good. I said I think that Buddy Hield, I think the craziest thing I said about that team was I think Buddy Hield can be as good as Clay was last year. And actually, I think he'd be better than he was last year. And that has turned out to be true. Just everything about the Golden State Warriors is firing on all cylinders. Ton of fun. Steph was crazy fun to watch yesterday, closing out the Mavericks. And it almost feels like Buddy Hield was just made for that Warrior system. And it's weird, too, with Buddy Hield. It feels like his shot got faster. I don't know what it is, but it seems like he's releasing that ball in record time. And Buddy Hield, last time I saw somebody try to time his jumper, it only took him like half a second to get off.
It's quick.
So it just feels like a match made in heaven. And I think the biggest thing for that team, though, is Wiggins looks so much better than he did last year. Kuminga looks better than he did last year.
No, I think you bring up a good point. The Wiggins-Kuminga combo are giving you 30 points and almost 10 rebounds because they kind of split time. And I think what's most impressive about Golden State, I don't know if you know this, they go deep, Brett. They go real deep. They don't go 8 or 9 men deep. They play 11, sometimes 12 guys a night. They go that deep, and maybe that explains how they're able to play at the pace that they play at, because even when Steph is off the floor, the pace doesn't change. And I think that says a lot about Steve Kerr. I think that says a lot about the veterans on that team, because if you told me, I'm a veteran starter, that yeah, you're going to start, but we're going to play 10 or 11 guys, so you're not going to play 30 plus minutes, you're going to play like 27, 28. A lot of guys wouldn't be down for that. I think everybody is buying into what they're doing because they're winning. Do I think what Golden State is doing is sustainable? Do I think when we get to near the end, are the Warriors going to be a 50 plus win team? I don't. I want to believe it's a real thing, but I think they'll be good. But a 50 plus win team, I don't know if what they're doing is sustainable, but it's impressive. It's really impressive. And they still have a question mark, Brett, and I want to bring it up to you. At the end of the day, Kaminga and his agent, his representatives came to the Warriors. They won an extension that paid him $30 million a year. Golden State did not do that. They opted not to. So I want to point out, Kaminga has no contract. He is going into his lame duck season, and the bottom line is this: you can't get to the trade deadline and there be nothing settled, because if you let it get past the trade deadline, he literally can just walk for nothing, and you would get no value back in return. So I think that's a big question mark. Even though they're playing well and there's chemistry and everybody's on board, I think you do have to make a decision on Kaminga at or around the trade deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Hey, maybe if things keep going south, maybe they check into Brandon Ingram. He's probably going to be cheap. He's on an expiring deal, and I don't think New Orleans wants anything. Is going to re-sign him after this one. So
you bring up a great point. He's in the same situation. They opted not to extend him, and even though BI is putting up numbers, the Pelicans have been mediocre. And to be fair, they've had a lot of injuries. But you and I have talked about Brandon Ingram a lot. We both agree he's a star, not a superstar, a star. But he's not the kind of guy that could be your best player. I think Brandon Ingram is probably a 2. I think in a perfect world, he's a 3. If he went to Golden State in the system that they have, I think he would fit well there. He doesn't shoot the 3 at the level that Buddy Hield and Steph does, but he's a mid-range demon. He can kind of pick up and be let's call it a watered-down version of KD. I think he can fit well in their system, and the way they're playing now, it would give him the space to operate too, one-on-one more. So I do think he's a good option if you're not going to extend Kaminga. The question is, though, if you trade for him, he's going to want money too. You're trading for another guy who's 6 years older or 7 years older than Kaminga, who's going to say, yeah, I want about $192 million too. That's the only question. Do you think, let me ask you this. I get where you would take Ingram for Kaminga, but do you think trading Kaminga for Ingram and knowing you're basically going to have to commit $200 million to Brandon Ingram, is that something you would be willing to do?
No. I threw it out there because I could see the Warriors possibly doing it. I think it's intriguing. And like you said, he brings a different dimension to what everybody else does because of how much he does work in the mid-range. But at the end of the day, I'm not willing to pay him that much. Somebody will. Somebody's going to pay Brandon Ingram. But if I'm Golden State, at that point, I'd just rather pay Kaminga.
It's tough for me. I'm with you. If I'm Golden State, if we have to move Kaminga, I don't think Ingram makes sense, but he doesn't make sense because I don't know if I don't want to pay Brandon Ingram $200 million. I think he's a really good player, but I don't think he's a great player. I don't think that if Steph Curry retires, you can go, we're good to go because we can build around Brandon Ingram. No, you can't. He's not the kind of player you build around. Brandon Ingram, to me, is a complimentary star. He is a sidekick. Or for lack of a better word, he is a Pippen. That's what he is. You don't give Pippen $200 million. I'm just not doing that. I would rather – I'm kind of leaning towards what you just said. If push comes to shove, I'll pay Kaminga. I'll give the kid – maybe I'll give him a shorter contract, but I'll give him the $30 million a year he wants, because at the end of the day, Brett, he's still only 21 years old. Like that, it's not like he's a finished product. He still can get better. Brandon Ingram, as talented as he is, he's a finished product. He's as good as he'll ever be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure that there's some other intriguing, prospects out there to trade Jonathan Kaminga for. Maybe stick on the Pelicans. I'm guessing the chances are slim, but I'd inquire about Trey Murphy. They're going to have to trade him too. I would inquire about him.
Brett, you read my mind. If I'm looking to acquire a piece from the Pelicans and I'm Golden State, you want Kuminga? I want Trey Murphy. Actually, I'm a little greedy. I'm Golden State. I want Trey Murphy, and I might want Alvarado too. I'm just saying, I'm greedy. Or maybe you get Trey Murphy and you get CJ in return, and you just bolster your bench and make them that much deeper. But Trey Murphy, to me, is very similar to Herb Jones. The only difference is he's right-handed. Herb Jones is left-handed, and Trey Murphy is a better shooter than Herb Jones. I think Trey Murphy, to me, is the trade-off between Kuminga and Trey Murphy. I don't even think that's an advantage for the Pelicans. I think that's a straight-up trade because I think Trey Murphy can do everything Kuminga can do, and he's a better shooter.
No, absolutely, for sure. And you know what's great, Mo? I do have a do better with Mo better for us this week.
Oh, I want to hear it.
I was debating about who to go after, my team or yours, and I just said, screw it, let's do both. It's not the teams, certain players. For the Bucks, I literally watched us almost lose to the Pistons. Why? Because of our supporting cast, but there's one guy I want to call out in particular. Pat Connaughton, stop leaving your feet on every head fake. If you watched the ending of that game, then you know why Marcus Sasser got that clean look to tie the game. It's because he head faked and Pat immediately jumped himself out of the play and gave up a clean look. And that's just a constant problem. You are like 10 years into your career. You should know at that point, stay on the ground, stay down, and force him to shoot around you, not jump out of his way to give him a clean look like that. But I think who really needs to do better, D'Angelo Russell. Yeah. That man looks shot. I don't know what it is. I think his confidence might just be shot. But there is just something off with him. And he's just got to play better. I can't put my finger on it with him, but he's just a player that seems to thrive on confidence, and he just does not look confident or comfortable out there. And we all saw it. He missed a wide-open finger roll, and LeBron gave him a look as, you know, they were getting back on defense. So, say, D'Lo, Pat, you both got to do better.
You know what? I didn't know we were going to do better this week, but those are two great picks. Look, the thing with D'Lo is you nailed it. He's a guy that everything is all about confidence. When he's confident, D'Angelo Russell is a much better, much more competent player. With him, it's not about his talent. It really is all about what's going on in his head. I will make the observation this. Playing with LeBron and LeBron constantly kind of looking at him and giving him looks, I think that affects him. But playing with LeBron and now playing for JJ Redick, who's a kind of in-your-face, quick to call you out kind of coach, I think that's wearing on D'Angelo Russell. I do. I think it's a kind of pressure that he's faltering under. And I'm just pointing out, it might be better if you brought him off the bench with the second unit to where he could be more of a focal point and not have to be so quick to defer to LeBron or AD, because he gets lost in the starting unit. I really think if you've got AD, LeBron, and Austin Reeves, I think D'Lo would do better with the second unit. He would get more opportunities, and I think he would be more confident playing against other second unit guys. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the starting lineup looked better with Cam Reddish out there, and that's really telling when it comes to, you know, if you know my opinion on Cam Reddish, they've been waiting on his potential since 2021. But they substituted D'Lo for Reddish, I believe, for one of the games, and that it just looked better. So I think they just got to keep bringing D'Lo off the bench too, and if it doesn't work out, he could be a name to watch to potentially get moved.
Yeah, look, the same way, you know, you and I were alike. We scour the NBA rumor boards and things of that nature. I know who I would love the Lakers to go after. I would love the Lakers to try to orchestrate a deal to acquire Anthony Simons from the Blazers. That's who I want them to acquire. I think Anthony Simons is a natural bucket getter, but I also think the perfect role for Anthony Simons is as a six man.
No, that's absolutely fair. I can see it. Yeah, no, and also, so speaking of injuries, poor Thunder. Chet's out, Hartenstein's out. Overall, I'll give them credit because they've been experimenting. I watched games where Jalen Williams will play center. They'll
I
have their
saw
guard
that. I saw that.
Caruso and Dort will tag bigs. So I'll give them credit for creativity, but man, that is just a rough stretch if you're the Thunder, just getting hit with every single one of your centers getting hurt.
Jalen Williams playing center seems crazy initially because he's only 6'5", but he's got a wingspan of a 7-footer. He's got crazy long arms and athleticism. So look, their last game it worked. I think that's only going to hurt them when they play against a big who can really hurt you on the offensive boards. When they play against Denver, you're not going to be able to do that against Joker. Even if you play against a team like the T Wolves, Gobert is so big, you're not going to be able to control him on the offensive boards with a 2 guard. So I think they're experimenting. They're trying to survive. It's crazy that both of their bigs are out. It just goes to show you never know. But they're such a deep and talented team. I don't think they're going to have much trouble holding the fort down until those guys get back.
No, it just I was so devastated to hear about the Chet injury because he had
Chet
been
played
playing
great.
so well.
Right.
Not only that, like you can make an argument that man was the could have won DPOY and he still could. He was just that impactful and insane to start the year.
I admitted it. I know before the season we were talking about Wemby's chance of winning DPOY, and I'm not saying Wemby isn't going to be right there, but when you watch both of these guys play on the defensive end, Chet has better defensive instincts than Wemby. Plain and simple.
Speaking of Wemby, I need everybody to come to an agreement on because one day we're complaining, and by we I mean the NBA community, we're complaining he's taking too many jumpers. Then he has a vintage Wemby game, and then his shot diet's perfectly fine until his next off game. I would have loved it if Wemby attacked near the rim more. I think he's shooting like 42% on the year, so he's off to a bit of a slow start in that regard. But I think people have to remember that he's still a work in progress and developing. Right now, I think they're happy with trying to develop his jumper. At any point, they could just post him near the rim if they really wanted to. But honestly, right now, when it's early in his career, you might as well try to figure out what you can and can't do with them, find out all the actions that work and don't work. But Wemby, he's slow starting, but I need us to chill on the Wemby, like he's taking too many jumpers critique because maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but I also believe that now's the time to be experimenting with Wemby.
I agree. I think the criticism is a little too harsh because do we not need to remind ourselves that he's in year 2? He's in year 2 of his career. He's not a finished product. And yes, he's 7'5", but you see his build. He's built like Kevin Durant. He's light in the ass. So he's not going to spend a lot of time in the post. I think there'll be opportunities, but let's not forget, he's still in the weight room. He's still trying to get stronger. I just think that I get it. When you come out and you have all the notoriety that he has, the expectations, I guess it feels like if Wemby doesn't drop 30 and 20, he's not playing well. I'd push back on it and say that for a second-year player who's still developing, I think he's playing great. And I like the fact, you pointed it out, I like the fact that they put him in different actions. What you don't want him to do, you don't want him to be one-dimensional. I want Wemby to be able to play on the perimeter, play in the mid-post, play in the post, pick and roll. I think the fact that they have him in multiple actions shows you his versatility. Yes, he takes a lot of jump shots, but he also takes a lot of jump shots by default, Brett, because he's doubled and triple teamed in the post. Not to mention the shooting around him hasn't really been consistent. You're not going to fear the other guys. They're not shooting that well. It's great that they've got I think Devin Vassell back because he is their second leading scorer. He will give them more spacing. But I would tell people, or at least ask other NBA fans, let's give Wemby a little bit of grace being in not just year two, but year two, he's 13 games into year two of his career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always feel bad for the little bit for the rookies and second year players coming into the league just because of how quickly people are, just willing to throw that bust label on them. I just think that a lot of people don't seem to understand that. I think like year 3 and 4 is really when you start to truly get a picture of who a player is. And sometimes they're still not fully developed. You see guys like Kyle Lowry just develop super late into their career, which is more abnormal than anything. But it's not really until that like third or fourth year that you really start to see the potential. Like Pascal, most improved. You saw what he could be. Kawhi Leonard won a Finals MVP in his third year. And you could see the flashes of greatness really start to come together. So I would say anybody worried about Wemby, just be more patient.
Yeah.
Give him another year. And I'm telling you, maybe it's not this year. They probably keep experimenting. But next year, you'll probably start to see the Wemby that starts maybe stealing some MVP votes. I would not doubt that. And he still could do it this year.
Right. And look, like I said, I love everything that Chet Holmgren was doing up until his injury. I think Chet's going to be right there with Wemby over the breadth of their careers, even though they have a different playing style. But Chet has the luxury early in his career of playing with a very deep and talented team. Chet has the luxury of not being the number one option on his team. Wemby he came into the league the number one option. And I'm not making excuses for him. I'm just saying where I'm looking at his numbers and I'm like, you act like he's playing like garbage. I think he's playing well. I think he's actually playing great for the talent that's around him. And it's early in the season. I actually think the Spurs have been somewhat respectable. So I think when it's all said and done, Wemby's going to continue to improve. We're going to look up 30, 45 games into the season and go, look at Wemby's numbers and look where Wemby is in the stand. Well, look where the Spurs are in the standings. I think the Spurs will win 30, 35 games. And that's not terrible. That's respectable. Let's give him a little bit of grace and see what he does as he develops.
No, absolutely. And I saw a take, Mo, and I thought it was actually interesting because it actually could very well be a realistic take. It's a big one. It's a big gamble to say, but the take was Wemby and Chet are going to be one of the greatest. What was it? Because I think Wemby went 1 and Chet went 2 in that draft, right?
Okay.
It was Wemby and Chet are going to be one of the greatest 1 and 2 picks from the same class of all time. And I don't even think it's that crazy, honestly, after watching them play it.
So when you make a take like that, yeah, look, I don't think it's impossible because I think that both guys are going to have terrific careers. I think at some point, both guys, Brett, are going to make multiple all-star teams and all NBA teams. I think at some point, both guys are going to be DPOY, maybe multiple times. Like I said, they have different playing styles, but there are some similarities. And I do think as a 1-2 coming out in college, I have no problem with that take. I can say, look, we won't know going forward until we get there. But you already see the signs. You already see the potential. So I have no problem with that take at all.
Let's see. Yeah, no, I'm super excited to see how their careers develop. And by the way, I do love that. By the way, I'm loving your TikToks about asking all the different sports like NBA questions. I did love the one that you brought up. It was, would the 04 Pistons be contenders or would they be just a playoff team? I did love that question. I think the answer is I trust their starting five. to bring them to the playoffs. I just don't trust their bench.
Yeah, you can pick apart their bench for sure. I have no problem with that. Although I would say this, I use the current Cleveland Cavaliers as an example. Cleveland's 13-0. Right now today, if you threw the Cleveland Cavaliers into a series with the 03-04 Pistons, the 03-04 Pistons are going to beat Cleveland. And I don't think it's a 7-game series. They're going to beat them outright. Ben Wallace and Rasheed Wallace are going to dominate Mobley and Allen. They are. It's not going to be close. Donovan Mitchell could be the best player in the series, but it won't look like it because defensively he can't guard Billups and he's not going to chase rip around screens. So I think it's interesting when people go like, oh, they would kill them because of the 3-point shooting. You act like Billups didn't make threes. You act like Rasheed Wallace couldn't stretch the floor. And I would ask you this, even in today's NBA, how many fours could guard Rasheed Wallace? How many
Not
fours?
a lot.
Right. And we're talking about this NBA. Remember, the 03-04 Pistons, they are the last vestige of hand checking. So they will be in this NBA where you can't hand check them either. What do you think Rasheed Wallace is going to do with that? He's going to eat people alive. Rip Hamilton running around circles and screens. Don't forget, Tayshaun Prince didn't shoot the three well, but he can shoot the mid-range. And for a slender guy, he had a nice post game. So I think that their starting five, to me, would be the reason they would win most series. I guess if you made it about depth, that could be an issue. But if they played the current version of the Cavaliers, that's not a great series. That's a 5-game series at best with the Pistons winning.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. I think they would beat most teams in the NBA now. I think the teams, like, for example, I think they'd have trouble with a team that everybody has trouble with, like the Celtics, for example. I think that they can match their starting five, and then the depth would be an issue. But there's not a lot of teams now, and even in 2024, that can match that starting five, because not only did they have the talent, but they had second-to-none chemistry that absolutely bothered most teams. They were long, athletic. Tayshaun Prince was also just stupid long, could pretty much guard anybody. So overall, that would be such a fun performance to see that team in the modern NBA.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Don't forget, both Rasheed and Ben Wallace, they were kind of ahead of their time because they were both bigs that can play in space defensively. Like Ben Wallace wouldn't be lost in today's NBA playing in space, nor would Rasheed Wallace. They were so long across the board. When you think about their front court, Ben, Rasheed, and Tayshaun Prince, that length just across the front court, that's insane. And I'm not saying the 04 Pistons would come in here and win a title in today's NBA. What I'm saying is I think they could make a deep playoff run. I think they would be a very good team in today's NBA.
Yeah, and it was funny. Speaking of Detroit, my underrated player of the week was actually, I almost made it an underrated playoff performance of the week, and because I was watching some old playoff film, and I'm like, I forgot how good in the 2006 playoffs Michael Redd was versus Detroit. He absolutely carved them up to the tune of 27 a game from 52% from the field, 42% from three. He was absolutely insane that series. So shout out to Michael Redd. He was my favorite player growing up. Because as soon as he said Detroit, I was like, oh, that's right. I forgot what he did to that team.
Michael Redd with that crazy release he had.
I always thought growing up that the release was so ugly, but it worked. It's not the ugliest release I've ever seen. It was just
not even close. So in my opinion, we could do a show and go the ugliest jump shots in the history of the NBA, and I think you would have to start with Joakim Noah and Sean Marion. Those have to be the two ugliest. One more. And you'll remember this name, Michael Kidd Gilchrist probably has the ugliest because his release literally looked like he's wrestling with himself. I've never seen anything. It is by far it's uglier than Marion's or Noah. That's how bad it is.
The part that bothered me about Kid Gilchrist wasn't even almost the release. Like, that was bad. But it's for some reason, it never looked like he was looking at the basket. Like, his head's like up that way. So I don't even know how he's like trying to envision this shot. So yeah. Who was that other guy? Was it Kevin Duckworth or Cartwright that really had a really ugly releases back?
Oh, Duckworth was like a shuffle. It was really weird. Like, it looked like he was doing a shot put. Yeah, I didn't get that either.
No, I think if we did worst free throw forms, I think somebody who came to mind, ironically, besides maybe Giannis, but I think somebody who was worse than him was Chuck Hayes. Because if I remember correctly, he like would randomly stop and then continue mid-motion.
I remember, right. So he was the guy that he would do like this weird hitch, and everybody would already be jumping into the lane. I mean, yeah, that was so weird. Yeah, he had a really weird hitch in his shot. Yeah, we could literally do a top 10 worst shooters, or at least worst shooting motions of all time. Chuck Hayes has have to be in there. His free throw shot is horrible. What about Nick Van Exel shooting his free throws from like almost the corner of the, like, he wouldn't shoot them from the free throw line. He'd be shooting them from like 20 feet. I mean, so awkward and weird that he shot better further away. Like, there are so many guys with weird releases, but I would challenge you to find a worse release than Kid Gilchrist. Like, Michael Jordan saw this guy at the combine and said, yeah, we want to draft this guy in the top 5. Like, really? You saw him. You saw that shot, and you wanted that guy.
It all comes back to that weird like the weird psychology that teams seem to have of, I can fix their jumper, I can fix their offense. Like, no, you really, like, there's some players you can, but most you really can. I love how people, anytime you get a lanky 3-and-D wing that is an absolute project, the first name that people go, well, look at Kawhi Leonard. Well, Kawhi Leonard and guys like that are just absolute anomalies when it comes to player development. Like, you also don't have the San Antonio player development team, so
exactly.
Like, I remember at the time, it was a risk to take Kawhi Leonard too at the time of the draft. Pop was nervous to trade George Hill for Kawhi Leonard. In 2024, you look back and you're like, I do that trade 10 times out of 10. But trading your starting solid veteran point guard for a completely unproven project out of San Diego? Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't a slam dunk back then, but it definitely turned out to be the right decision.
It wasn't a slam dunk, but shout out to the San Antonio scouting staff. Cause you know what I mean? Like yeah. that goes back even further. Remember where Tony Parker was drafted? Like, a lot of teams could have had Tony Parker. Like, no one knew that Tony Parker was going to be what he was going to be. The Spurs had an insane scouting staff.
I absolutely agree. That's almost one of my they're definitely still up there in finding projects, but now teams like Miami's absolutely insane. Ironically, I was joking with Kevin there in the chat. I was like, I think the Bucks' new strategy should just be follow the Miami Heat scouts wherever they go. It's not carpool or something. Sneak onto the plane. I don't care, but
if that's the case, then the Lakers need to do the same. Like, I'm still trying to figure out why we gave Max Christie $32 million. Like, I'm watching Max Christie during the course of the season, and I'm still looking at him going like, how is this worth $32 million? And no offense, I get it. I know who his pops is. Bronny's not worth his contract either, if we're being honest. He's not. He just flat out isn't. The Lakers, I think they're 6-4. Their problem really isn't that starting 5. The problem is they don't have any depth. They have no firepower coming off the bench. Look, I do believe in Dalton Connect. I actually think Dalton Connect would be more effective if he played with the starters. Maybe bring D'Lo down and start Connect or something of that effect. But they have to find a way to bolster up that bench because Jackson Hayes, Dalton Connect, you just have to have some kind of firepower off the bench. I don't even know what the numbers are, but I would guarantee you the Lakers bench probably ranks in the late 20s, if not dead last in the NBA in points per game. And the Warriors are probably number one.
Let's see. I remember. Let's see if I can find the bench points real quick. I remember one team's bench that I always hated, even though they always had one of the highest scoring benches in the league. Those the Lob City Clippers.
Yeah.
I absolutely never really liked their bench. And it's funny because they always had one of the better benches in the league, but I always felt like they got carried so far in that regard by Jamal Crawford giving them 18, and then they would average 27 or 26 on the year. So it's okay, one guy's giving you 18, you got 5 other guys giving you 2 points a game. All right, bench points per game. Oh, here they are. They are 27th.
That's better than I thought. Like I said, they're not good. They don't get they just don't. And I'm not saying you got to have a guy coming off the bench dropping 20 a game, but I do think you need to have guys that can give you 10, 8. When you look at Golden State off their bench, they've got 4 guys that average 9 or 8 points a game. That's production. That's all I'm saying.
So,
and we don't do that.
For context, the second best bench in the league right now is the Memphis Grizzlies. They're getting 46 points a game out of their bench.
No doubt.
Do you want to take a guess how many points the Warriors are getting out of their bench right now?
I want to say 50.
58.
Oh, my God.
According to NBA.com, their bench is giving them 58.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you and I were talking about earlier. They play, I'm not exaggerating, they do something that the old school Georgetown Hoyas do. 5 guys come in, 5 guys go out, 5 guys come in. They're playing 10 to 11 guys a night, and they're playing at a fever pitch pace, and they allow everybody to be a scoring threat. So that's Moses Moody, Kuminga, Wiggins, Buddy Hill's phenomenal. You got Steph, Pajinski, Pods. What's the guy that used to play for the Sixers last year that just came over?
Melton.
Yes, he's playing terrific. He's giving you 10 points per game. They're just doing it as a unit, and it's working. But I'm not going to lie to you. You tell me I'm playing a team that averages 58 points a game from their bench. That's insane.
Son of Andre, how you doing, sir?
Hey, what's good, Andre?
I will say, I think the most insane stat, though, that I've seen so far this year, and mind you, it may have changed since I last saw the number, the Knicks have to do something about, doing a better job keeping players away from the rim, because last time I looked, they were shooting 91% at the rim against Karl Anthony Towns. It was 32 to 35. I really think that so far, if this has proven anything with Karl Anthony Towns, I think y'all better be apologizing for saying Rudy didn't deserve that DPOY, because you see exactly kind of what Rudy did for Karl Anthony Towns, because Karl Anthony Towns isn't a great rim protector. He's a better one-on-one defender, but he's not the guy you want as your last line of defense protecting the rim. And we're seeing that this year. He didn't have to be a rim protector last year with Rudy. Now he's back to being a rim protector, and it's not going great. And I'm sure it'll definitely get better than what it's doing now, but I don't know how much, because even pre-Rudy, the problem was they could never protect the rim with Cat being out there.
I think that's fair. I think it's not a secret Towns is not a great rim protector, but I've watched this current version of the Knicks. Their perimeter defense is god-awful. It's god-awful. Cat might not be protecting the rim well, but these guys are getting blown by at will. Josh Hart is supposed to be known for his defense. I watched the game the other night against the Bulls, and Zach LaVine was eating him alive. Eating him alive. Their perimeter defenders, when you look at Bridges, Hart, and OG, that threesome should be an elite trio on the perimeter, and they have underwhelmed. They have underwhelmed. So, yes, Cat's not a great rim protector, but their defense overall has not been good. I think this year, defensively, defensive efficiency, they're like 19th. That's a huge drop from what they were before. And by the way, as much as I love Jalen Brunson, not a good defender. Not. He's not he competes defensively, but he's not a good defender.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it almost feels like that's ironically like that was supposed to be the strength of this group, perimeter defense.
Right, right.
And it needed to be the strength of this group because we all know the deficiencies of Karl Anthony Towns as the rim protector. But with the Knicks, if they're not living up to their end on the perimeter, then this defense is just going to be terrible. And it'll be interesting because obviously if the defense struggles and if Brunson has an off shooting night, I'm not sure, how they turn it around, honestly. So they need their defense to step up because if Brunson has an off shooting night, they don't really have a secondary creator either. So
no, you're right.
It's just a weirdly constructed team that everything needs to go just perfectly.
I pointed that out to a friend of mine who is an avid, insane New York Knicks fan, that your team is flawed in two fronts. One, you don't have a pure shooter. You have guys that can score, but the closest thing to a pure shooter on the team is Karl Anthony Towns. Your center is the closest thing to a pure shooter, but everybody else are scorers. They're not shooters. And two, you don't have multiple shot creators. Brunson is your only shot creator. Bridges is not a shot creator. OG is not Josh Hart. Like maybe Towns if he gets double teamed, but I think you need to go out and at least try to get another shot creator because if you put everything on Brunson like you currently are, look, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And Brunson's already injured now. We're early into the season. You've got to go out and get somebody else who can take him off the ball, period.
It's funny because I never actually take Josh Hart seriously until the second half of the year. We're giving him some time, don't you worry. We're not completely out on the Knicks, just observations right now. But Josh Hart is somebody I never take seriously until the second half of the year because there are like some players that you can tell slowly ramp it up through the season. And that's been Josh Hart to a T, just almost his entire career. Until like January, he looks like the worst player to ever touch a basketball court. But then all of a sudden, like when you really need him in February, March, and April, he looks like the greatest player of all time. Like, I love Josh Hart. He's just one of those players that every year he just slowly ramps it up, and he's always ready to go at the right time. So I'll give him all the credit in the world for that.
I like Josh Hart when he plays with a chip on his shoulder. When he plays with a chip on his shoulder, he's a completely different player, a completely different competitor. And look, I get it. When you bring in a Bridges, when you bring in Towns, that's a huge piece. And a lot of this is on chemistry. But the fact that I'm pointing out something obvious, and you pointed out, that they only have one true shot creator, that's not me about them giving them more time. They literally have one shot creator. You've got to go out. You've got to get another guy to give Jalen Brunson a break. I really believe that because he's not getting easy baskets. Everything is coming hard because teams are attacking him and taking the ball out of his hands. I just think that when you have three perimeter players that are more defensive minded in Bridges, OG, and Hart, you're kind of imbalanced. And it's weird because you have three defensive perimeter players, but your defense isn't very good. They've got to find some kind of balance there. But you do have to go out, and I don't mean just a backup point guard. I mean another guy that can literally create for himself and others. That's something that I think the Knicks desperately need. It's early in the year. I think Brett, I think you and I had the Knicks in the top 5 when it's all said and done, right?
Yep.
And I haven't changed that, but I'm always thinking in the bigger picture. When they lost to the Pacers last year, one of the reasons why is everything was put on Brunson because they don't have any other shot creators.
Andre asked, I see some Knicks fans worried about Bridges already. How do you guys feel? I'll let you start off with that one, Mo.
I mean, he's off to a slow start, but I think coming into this season with these Knicks, I had Bridges averaging between 16 and 18 points a game, maybe 5 rebounds. What I wanted from him more than anything is I wanted the Bridges that can play defense at an elite level. I think the scoring will come around, but the way that they're built, I expect Bridges and OG's offensive numbers to be very similar. My only concern is, are OG and Bridges shooting at a high percentage? And right now they're not. So to me, as long as they're shooting at a high percentage offensively and they're being efficient, I'm more concerned about what they do defensively. But I think Bridges is going to be fine. If you thought he was going to be Nets Bridges, where he averaged around 20 a game, he's not, because when he was on the Nets, he was basically a number 1 option. On the Knicks, he's probably the 3rd or 4th option.
I think the only big concern I have with Bridges, really, because I think the defense will, round into form over time. But I am concerned about his 3-point percentage. And it just comes back to the fact that he did change his release over the offseason. And it's a much higher release. And a lot of the times when players try to release it higher, it's almost more like a line drive. And it can normally, they'll be perfectly fine in the mid-range still. But as soon as you back up to the 3-point line, it's hard. It's really hard. It's almost why guys like Allen Iverson struggled. He jumped really high and he had this really high release and it almost caused a line drive. I think Mikal Bridges, mid-range, will be fine. I think he can finish around the rim. But I am not really sold on him being a really great 3-point shooter this year. I think he'll sit around, I'm going to say, give me 33, 34% from 3, slightly below average. And yeah, it's slower. It's higher. It just all got worse. So I'd be worried about his 3-point. I think his 3-pointer's not going to be great, but other than that, I think he's going to be perfectly fine.
So what you're telling me is Mikal Bridges shouldn't be taking 5 or 6 threes a game.
No.
That's what you're telling me. He should focus more on the mid-range and attacking the basket. Which, by the way, if you told me Bridges and OG were aggressive and they were attacking the basket, and let's say they were getting to the foul line 5-6 times a game, I would be content with that. You think about their front court. All 3 of those guys are slashers, right? You call them slashers.
Yeah.
If you're a slasher, that means you're aggressive. You're going to get fouled because there's going to be contact. Those 3 guys don't get to the foul line a lot because for some reason, by default, they all take jump shots. They all settle for jump shots. I need them to be more aggressive attacking the basket.
And to your point, Mikal Bridges is averaging 6 threes a game and hitting them at a 30% clip.
Yeah, you got to stop that.
While averaging 1 free throw attempt a game.
This is why I say the things I say. Come on, man. You're athletic. You can get to the rim. You don't shoot the 3 well. Stop shooting 3s and attack the rim and get to the foul line 5 or 6 times a game.
The only 2 that are in that 5 to 6 range are Brunson and Cat. OG is averaging 2. Same with Josh Hart.
That doesn't make sense. Think about that. All 3 of them are slashers. And between them, they don't average 5 free throws a game? Insane.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. In fact, Mikal Bridges averages about as many free throws a game as Miles McBride. Mikal averages 1, McBride 0.9. So,
hey, but McBride's got a good excuse, though. He's primarily a jump shooter. I get that.
Yeah, I think he's just got to slightly tweak his game, though, Andre, and I think he'll be fine. But the 3s have to go down. The driving and aggressiveness have to go up. Yeah, I say, Cat had another 40 piece. He's been impressive. he's finally up there in 3-point attempts. It took him a while. I was kind of concerned about the Knicks offense because at one point he was behind like Cam Payne and a bunch of other guys for 3-point attempts, but now he's fourth on the team. So although I even think fourth is too low for him, I think he's got to be 1 and 2. Him and Brunson should be attempting should probably attempt him, Brunson, OG. I would say should be attempting the most threes.
Agree. I think Cat should be number 1. He's their best shooter. Your center is your best shooter. I wouldn't mind if they ran the offense more through him to give Brunson the opportunity to get more catch and shoot opportunities. Because it's not like Hart or OG or Bridges are gonna create for Brunson. Like I said, I think the Knicks are still one of the best teams in the East, and I do think they're trying to gather some chemistry with their new pieces. Look, everybody has an obvious flaw. I look at the Bucks and I go, they need better perimeter defenders. I look at the Sixers and I go, you need to get rid of those dead weights that are around your franchise's neck, Embiid and Paul George. I look at the Knicks and go, you guys need shooters. You don't have any shooters on your roster. You don't have any one guy other than Towns that you go, oh my God, don't leave him open. What you have is a bunch of guys on your roster that the other team is like, yo, take that shot. We're good with you taking that shot so we can get this rebound. The Knicks have to get better floor balance, and they have to get better floor balance. They have to go out and get a shooter.
No, absolutely, for sure. And yeah, it's I love it because Mikal already has 69 threes, and the next closest is Brunson with 61. Cat has 59, and OG Anunoby has 60. So they're slowly figuring it out.
You know what that is, Brett? When you get that many threes, that's not by accident. The other team is like inviting you to take those threes. You're open for a reason.
No, absolutely. Overall, this NBA season has been a lot of fun. A little trial and tribulation for my Bucks. I will remember that in 2001 we started 3-9 and we were 1 game away from the finals that year. So we got this. No worries.
Hey, was that the Ray Allen Sam Cassell team or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Glenn Robinson.
Yeah, big dog.
Yeah, man, if only we didn't get, because I remember we had our small forward was the small forward from the Bulls dynasty era. It was
Caffey?
What's his name? Oh, it's the small forward. It was like Scott something.
Scott Burrell.
Let's see.
Scott Burrell?
No.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. You're talking about the Scott. Oh man, I know who you're talking about.
Williams.
Yeah.
Wait, no, it wasn't Williams.
No, it's Scott Williams. You're right. That's it. It's Scott Williams.
Yeah, there. Yeah. It is Scott Williams. Whew. Yeah, but no, we had Scott Williams because I remember it was him that got suspended in that game 6. And that absolutely killed us because we didn't have the size to deal with Mutombo in Game 7. Because we needed that extra toughness, and we were Chris Middleton, Gardi, he's robbing us, bro. Were you happy when they brought him back? Okay. With Chris Middleton, I'm always happy I'm happy we kept Chris. Obviously, a lot of people want to say we should have traded him instead of Drew when it came to getting Dame. Need I remind everybody that Chris Middleton had just signed an extension because we didn't realize that Dame was going to be available. So in order to trade Chris for Dame, that would have required Portland to wait until December 15th. They were not waiting that long for a Dame Lillard trade. So it was either we have to trade Drew Holiday to get Dame or we don't get Dame. The big problem with those Milwaukee Bucks teams with Drew, half-court offense. And that's something that Damian Lillard should have, theoretically provides us in bulk. And he's shown that he can do that. So when it comes to Chris Middleton, I saw how valuable he was on no good ankles, still dropping a 40 piece against the Pacers. He was giving us 25 a game, just pretty much the only reason we took the Pacers in 6 last year. Overall, and plus, his chemistry with Giannis is absolutely insane. At the end of the day, when it comes to Chris, it's frustrating. It absolutely is, and I'm sure there's nobody more frustrated right now than Chris Middleton. But I trust the process. I trust that we're doing what's best for Chris, and I'm happy that he's still with the team, and I'll be really happy to see him on the court again.
Let me ask you this, because I know you're a big Middleton fan. I am too. But should the opportunity come up where you can upgrade at his position and you can get somebody who can drop 20 a night and score, but they're younger, would you make that move, or would you be like, no, I'm going to hold on to Chris and try to make another run with Chris, Giannis, Brook and company, or would you make that move towards the future?
I think you make the move towards the future. I love Chris, but at the end of the day, it's all about looking forward, and you want to extend Giannis's window to contend. I love Chris, but at the end of the day, he is 34 with bad ankles. So he is not. I love him. He's great, but he's not untouchable. So I think if the opportunity arose that we can trade Chris for an upgrade, I think we jump on it. It would be a sad day. He has countless great moments with us, especially in that 2021 finals run. But yeah, if I had the chance to upgrade Cash, I unfortunately would.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because all the wars that they've been through, the process they've been through, the championship they won. Middleton was a big part of all those things. He's been a multiple-time All-Star with the Bucks as well. It is tough to see some of your core guys get older. But to me, I have a simple belief. If I were a GM, I'm going to do everything in my power to constantly extend my franchise players' window to compete for a title, right? So I have to throw sentimental value and feelings to the side and go, what's best for Giannis, and me giving him an opportunity to be a title contender year in and year out. You have to make some tough moves. It's the reason why, even though he's still playing at an elite level, I remind people all the time, Damian Lillard is 34 years old. At some point, the bottom will fall out, and he will start looking like a guy in his mid-30s. So my thing is, how long do you think the Damian Lillard window is open playing at a superstar level, at least offensively, because he doesn't give you anything defensively?
I think I'd say at least another 2 years. I think he's still showing that he has a lot left in the tank this year. And I don't see any reason that would change next year. I think, after that, I think maybe towards the end of next year, you're going to start seeing some signs of a decline. But I still think we're a solid. I think he could still give us at least an elite 2 years before forcing us into some uncomfortable conversations, which ironically, that's about the time his next contract is up. I think he'll still be Damian Lillard throughout the duration of this contract. If I'm Milwaukee, it's the next one that I'm like, 39? You're going to be what, 38, 39 when this is over? I don't know about that, Chief.
Well, let's be honest. A lot of great players in this era are playing at a high level and are still great players into their mid and early 30s. Now, obviously, there's one anomaly who's getting ready to turn 40 who's still playing at a high level. And so, because he's so unique, that guy can still ask for a big contract and nobody would bat an eye. But I'm with you. When Damian Lillard's 36 years old and he comes to you and go, I'm thinking about $180 million extension. Milwaukee's general manager got to be like, nah, we're thinking something like 80 million. You know what I mean? Like you're 36. Like unless you're playing at a level better than when you were 32 or 30, I can't give you a huge contract at 36.
Yeah, yep. It's at the end of the day, that's exactly when his player option's up. When he has a player option when he turns 36. So that
How
comes
much is
down.
how much is the player option for?
He might just take it. Honestly, it's
That's what I'm gonna say. If it's big, he'll take it.
58 million.
Yeah, he's not walking away from that.
I'll say so. At that point, you're going to see him become a restricted free agent when he's 37. So I do think that he probably takes that player option because I don't, unless he really wants more money over the longer term. I just don't see anybody giving him 60 million
No.
to a 36-year-old Lillard.
You're 38. You can walk right into 58 million. Now, if the Bucks come to the table and go, we're not going to give you more per year, but what if we give you more guaranteed money and sign you 3 more years for $90 million? Would he take the more? You know what I mean? He probably would take that security, right? More money.
Yeah, but you know what? 38-year-old aging superstar, that just sounds like right up in Miami's territory. So
That is kind of what the Heat do. The Heat, in a lot of ways, are like the Raiders of the NBA. You get hold of some superstar that's not a superstar anymore, and they go to Miami. I'm looking at Miami now, and I feel like they're in NBA purgatory. They're just good enough to compete, but I don't think they're good enough to be competing for a title. I don't even know if Miami makes the playoffs.
I think a Jimmy trade has to be coming at some point, probably next offseason, I'm guessing, but
Well, it can't come in next offseason because I think his contract is up, and he already told Miami. Remember what he said? They offered him an extension. He said no. Jimmy said he's going to hit free agency. I have to believe, knowing Pat Riley, with Pat Riley's track record, he's not saying anything. He's saying all the right things. It would not shock me if Jimmy Butler got moved this year.
no, that's fair. And definitely wouldn't be a shortage of a market for him. I'm sure there'd be plenty of teams that think that they could, get that last, they'll try to get that last good year out of Jimmy Butler
Yeah,
the last
yeah.
couple of years. And as much as I love Jimmy, he's I don't know if he has that in him anymore. I think he could be a really good complementary star at this point for a really good team. But I think if some team's going to get him thinking that he can be their number one option, I think that well is run dry. I don't think he's the number one guy. I think he's your clutch time closer still. Nobody wants it more than him. I think he's still that fourth quarter dog. But I think at this point he's better suited to be a number 2 or 3 option, kind of like what we're seeing with DeMar DeRozan in Sacramento.
So let me ask you this. You just gave me a quick thought hit me. Would you trade Chris Middleton for Jimmy Butler?
I mean, I almost want to say I would. Like, I know Jimmy is healthier than Chris Middleton, but it's tough because what's tough is I really don't feel like Jimmy. There's some guys that you look at and you don't think they're, a Milwaukee guy. And the thing with Milwaukee is we're a small market and we sometimes cannot attract or keep superstars.
Right.
I part of me would say maybe, but I also don't feel like Jimmy Butler would want to stay in Milwaukee long term. So I want to say yeah, because I do think Butler's more talented, but it almost feels like that would end up being a short-term rental. Well, Chris is more banged up. He has more miles on his body, but at least I know with Chris that he's willing to stay for the long haul and he'll be loyal to the franchise. So it's tough. I think I would though. Like it's really tough. Like I would say yeah, I would make that trade.
I only asked the question for this reason. If you were able to pull that trade off and you got Jimmy Butler, even if you knew there's a good chance he might be a 1-year rental. If he were a 1-year rental, though, and it turned out within that span, you guys won another title, would you not say it was worth it?
Oh yeah, nope. If we win a title, it's all worth it. I don't really care. It's why. It's almost like when people talk about your Lakers with the Anthony Davis trade. They still try to. Was it worth it? Well, obviously they won the title the next year.
I always tell people that they're like, "Man, you had Lonzo and Bi and all these." I get what you're saying, but the goal in the NBA or in any pro sport is to win a title. And I know it's been a few years since we won that title, but we won that title. The title counts. You can tell me everything you want about Lonzo, who I like, Bi, who I like, and some of the other young players. I'm going to ask you this: out of all those young players that the Lakers traded Anthony Davis for, how many championships do they have between them? 0.
And how many would have they had if they all stayed together on the Lakers?
0. Right.
Like,
Right.
player development on a LeBron-led team isn't a priority. So, plus, you're not. If they stay on the Lakers, you're not seeing the same players that you are now.
Facts.
Completely different developmental chart.
Facts.
And,
The current Julius Randle that you see, had he stayed, you wouldn't see that Julius Randle. The current Brandon Ingram, you could go down the list. Maybe the only guy whose game would have been similar, maybe would have been Lonzo's. But even Lonzo got better once he got away. Look, there's a lot of great things you can say about LeBron James, but LeBron James he's kind of big on veterans and guys that are established players. What he doesn't do is he does not groom young players. He does not help develop young talent. That's not his thing.
yeah, like there is one trade from that year I hate on the Lakers for, but I think this one I was hating on them when they made the trade. Not Anthony Davis. It was trading Ivica Zubac for Mike Muscala, who ended up walking.
Yeah, I didn't like that trade either.
That was the one where I'm like, that doesn't make, remotely sense at all. Anthony Davis, I was like, cool, give up your entire young core. That's okay. You have LeBron on your team. But to me, I saw the trade. It's like, oh, they got Mike Muscala. I'm like, that was never relevant, and it's not relevant in 2020. Like,
but you know that the same way the Russell Westbrook trade was a LeBron idea, the Mike Muscala trade was a LeBron idea. Why did they make that trade? Because Big Z, he only operates in the restricted area. Muscala has established himself as somewhat of a three-point shooter. That's a LeBron move. LeBron wanted more spacing. He wanted more shooting. But what LeBron should have recognized is more times than not, Mike Muscala is a bricklayer. He can make threes, but he ain't gonna live behind the three-point line. It was a bad move. Look at Big Z now. He's a look. If had the Lakers kept him, he still would have been one of the better backup centers in all of the NBA. Matter of fact, had the Lakers kept him and developed him, who's to say that he wouldn't be starting with AD in the starting lineup and AD would be at the 4?
I was gonna say he would be starting because AD wants to be at the 4.
Right. Like, I'm just saying. Sometimes I always say this. Sometimes it's the moves you don't make. The Lakers make. I've always been frustrated with them. Like when the Spurs were ravaging the European leagues and finding these unknown gems, the Lakers were late to the game, so we tried to get in on it. We didn't get a Tony Parker. We got what's the dude's name?
Vucevic?
Yeah, we got Sasha and guys like that, Medvedinko. Like we didn't get great European players. We always got the European players that other European players used to dominate and own. We don't have a great scouting staff. Even in the draft before last, we took Hood Schifino, even though everybody knew Cam Whitmore was the better, more talented player. Rob was trying to think outside the box and do a Rob move, so he did that. Didn't understand that. Again, I have nothing against Max Christie. If you tell me, but Mo, you don't understand. In practice, Max Christie is hell. Nobody can guard him. And we thought if he could translate that to the games, signing him for $32 million over 4 years is a steal. That's great. If when the games start, he is what you guys project him to be. I'm watching Max Christie now. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look. Matter of fact, if as much as you want to kill D'Lo, he's played better than Max Christie. Like, I don't know what Rob Pelinka's doing. I don't think Rob Pelinka knows what Rob Pelinka's doing.
Yeah, I think sometimes, you see teams hit on these, like, throw, almost looks like they throw darts on the boards and hit with some really random prospects that nobody saw coming. And other teams just get too cute, like, ooh, I can do that, or I want to try that. It's like after the Bucks drafted Giannis and he started working out, all of a sudden we saw a lot of teams just draft a bunch of tall, lanky prospects. Like, oh, well, you see how Giannis developed? Like, once again, the issue is these GMs look at these, like, anomaly, once every couple of years developments and think, oh, well, maybe that'll happen to us this year. And that's how you end up with guys like, that's how you end up with, like, a Hud Shafino or a Thon Maker. You draft guys and you go,
oh, God, say that name again, Thon Maker. Oh.
Yeah, he just at this point is better known for, trying to drop kick guys in the European League. Like,
Thon Maker is a good example. Another guy who's a little bit more recent, Mo Bamba. Right? They looked at him like he's long and lanky and can shoot the three. Mo Bamba's gonna be an elite player, and it just doesn't happen.
I will say I did want the Bucks to get Mo Bamba a couple of years ago, but we ended up not getting him, and I was really happy because then I watched him with the Lakers. I'm like, you know what? It's just not there. I thought I could sit him behind Brook and develop him into this, like Brook 2.0 to space the floor and maybe occasionally post up. And
right.
Then I actually got a closer look at him. I'm like, yeah, you know what? No, probably not.
See, the Lakers did you a solid.
No, before we head on out, and I also, please tell Gabe Vincent to hit some threes. It's been tough to watch, too.
Ooh,
the man's like 8 of 56 from 3 or something. I saw it's the most insane thing.
Okay, I take back what I said. Gabe Vincent might be playing worse than Max Christie. He's certainly shooting worse than Max Christie.
Yeah, but that's all I had for us today. Mo, is there anything you want to add before we get up on out of here?
No, I appreciate everybody that's checking us out live on the And1 podcast. We appreciate you guys so much, your support, your follows, your likes, your subs. Just thank you. And check out all the other great content we have at Wire to Wire. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And next week, we're going to have a watch along. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to watch Mo's Lakers and the Magic. That was my big team from last year. This year, it's the Charlotte Hornets and the Houston Rockets. So I'm looking forward to that next week. Also, I played the vignette before the show. Next Tuesday, we're sitting down with the champ on the Meaty Boys podcast. Camaro Jackson is going to be in the house. So check us out next Tuesday as we sit down with the champ. Check out Mo and I. Hang out with us. Watch the Lakers and Magic play. And we thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we hope you have a great rest of your night.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the And1 podcast. If you like our content, you can find more on the Wire to Wire Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Want more And1? Find it on Wire to Wire. Like and share our Facebook page, and join the And1 Discord. Grab the link to join from our Facebook. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.